There are a lot of trinkets in Dandy's with a total of 43. However, they're not all balanced, with many trinkets being awful to use over others. And that has caused a lot of people to use bad trinkets thinking they are helpful, so why not make a guide on what each trinket does, how helpful it can be, and when you should be using it. To make things simple, I've created a tier list to organize the trinkets into sections based on their utility. However, those trinkets are not ranked inside of those sections. For each trinket, I will show what tunes I suggest using that trinket on, starting off with the bottom tier, and the only ones I won't give any suggestions of tunes to use this trinket on, because they really don't help any tune, because these trinkets are pretty useless. Let's start with quite the popular choice, that being Fancy Purse and Coin Purse to go along with that. Fancy Purse gives the player 100 tapes at the start of a round, with Coin Purse giving 30. Coin Purse is obviously useless since 30 tapes barely buys you anything. But what about Fancy Purse? I mean, that is enough for a medkit in Dandy's shop. Well, no. Tapes are very easy to get, and even if you get a medkit on floor 1 or 3 from the shop, it isn't that big of a deal. If you need the medkit that bad, then why not just use a trinket that will help you not need them as much, instead of a trinket that can get you one and is then completely useless. This covers most tunes, but there are 5 tunes where there are arguments I can see. Ginger and Cosmo need healing items to heal other team members, but it isn't hard to just wander around while others do machines to grab tapes, if there isn't a Sprout and plenty of players leave heals for them. Bassie's another one, so she can buy good items from the shop, but I would say employ the same strategy as the others, and on all 3 of them, Beamut is a good way of getting some more tapes. Plus, there's a trinket that's just better that I'll discuss later. Now, Tegan and Sprout are both tunes that use tapes in their ability. However, Fancy Purse is a single heal, then does nothing. It's better to just go wandering around looking for tapes as fast as possible if you have people that will take them. Or maybe do machines. Besides, if people are taking tapes or getting her early, then just don't heal them. It's a valuable resource that you can't waste. Tegan, it just matters less on because she heals herself, so just use a trinket better for your survival instead of a single extra heart. Or, if you get lucky, maybe slightly more by getting a band-aid or medkit. It loses use quick and is then practically the same as no trinket. Going along with Fancy Purse is its common side trinket, Fishing Rod. Fishing Rod gives you 3 or 4, if you're brassy, items that can go up to rare. Subcommon and uncommon items are not that hard to find, just lying on the ground, and none of them are good enough to use a trinket that does nothing after the round starts. Then what about the rares? Well, the only item worth a trinket is a band-aid, but not only is that too rare for the gamble to be worth it, but it's better to just use a trinket that can actually help you survive or get things done faster so you don't need the band-aid in the first place. While not as commonly used, Bear Bulb is also here. This makes it so you shine slightly brighter during blackouts. Not in a way to kinda help like V, Connie, or Rudy do naturally. It does barely anything. Besides, blackouts are a thing where you just need caution. The light isn't gonna be doing anything helpful for you. Another useless trinket is the Whispering Flower, which highlights where all items are on the map during panic mode. This is the worst time to hide an item, since you should just be getting to the elevator. I can only see a little bit of use on this with Bassie, but you might as well just go wandering around to look for good items since you extract so slowly. Plus, it's still a risk not worth taking even if you are Bassie. It's a neat idea, but it's gonna end up causing a player to see a good item and then die trying to go to it and back. Or it's useless because the good item was already found, which on any later floor it most likely will. On the topic of event trinkets, let's discuss the Egg Radar and Festive Lights, which work nearly the same. These 2 trinkets highlight nearby ornaments or baskets being the event currencies at the time. These are useless outside of the events because they do literally nothing, and even in the event, it isn't that hard to just find the item, so there's no reason to waste a trinket slot on that. Moving on to the next trinket, Pull Toy, giving you a 25% boost in both your walk and run speed for 10 seconds at the start of a floor. This only really helps on the chance the Twisted is even near the elevator at the start, which for how much I have played isn't super common. And the start of a floor is when you are full of stamina, so it isn't all that difficult to just get away from the Twisted without the Pull Toy. I just don't see any sort of point in its existence when it barely does anything most of the time. Another Dandy trinket is the Speedometer, giving you 15 extra stamina. Yeah, 15 extra stamina isn't worth the waste of a trinket slot, so it's only really good for starters. But even that is barely helpful when you could save up your XP to buy good tunes or better trinkets. Not a lot to explain with this one, it's pretty plainly bad. On to another starter trinket, being the Blushy Bat. This is a free trinket obtained through joining the group, but it makes Twisted's attack cooldown last 3 more seconds, so not great. It works for starters who have nothing better, but still isn't all that good. That 3 seconds could help slightly, but it isn't enough if you are out of stamina, so you end up not being able to get away most of the time. And if you do have stamina, you don't really need this trinket at all, since there isn't a use gotten out of it. Finally, onto the last 2 trinkets, that being Coal and Brick. Brick lowers movement speed by 10%, and Coal lowers movement speed by 20%, with stealth blowing by 10%. These just make you slower, and Coal makes you get seen more. Maybe it could have use on Pebble if you're good at distracting, since with Dog Push, your speed would be 18, but it isn't worth it enough for the lower speed, and it wasn't made to be good anyways. These are challenge trinkets, so I just meant to make the game harder. Alright, On the trinkets have a use if you really want to use them, but there are always better options instead of these. I will be suggesting Toon starting now, but take these with a grain of salt because of their poor use. I will start off with Alarm. This trinket gives you a 25% walk and run speed boost for the first 10 seconds of panic mode. Unless you're on a big map, it usually isn't all that difficult to elevate it in 30 to 40 seconds. And if you are a slower Toon, it is better to just not stray too far away. Well, some machines have been completed if you worry about stray too far away, some machines have been completed if you worry about not making it in time. Besides, it only being for 10 seconds really pushes it down, so you'll be running the majority of the time unless you have low stamina, but then you just save it for when you're close, because only 1-star stamina students don't have low movement speed. Or true. Plus, there's just a better trinket over this one. I'm not having a ton of use, I can see it working on Connie and Wrestle and Dazzle due to them having 1-star movement speed. I can also see it being fun to use on Shelly and Finn, but that isn't really practical. Next up is Thermos, which increases stamina regeneration by 15%. I don't personally see this being all that helpful because if you are letting your stamina regenerate, you usually will be hiding, so the amount of time it takes doesn't matter, and it isn't that long either way. I only see Thermos being somewhat useful if you need to regain stamina with Twisted on you, but 50% isn't a big enough change for it to matter all that often. I guess it could help if you're wasting your stamina a lot, but that is better to just learn that skill instead of wasting a trinket slot on Thermos. If you do decide to use it, I could see it getting the most use on turns under 3-star movement speed, especially someone like V who has lower stamina. Or it could be used on Gigi due to her stamina, Yada too, but her 4-star movement speed allows a much better option. Headboard armor is another important get with it providing protection from one long range attack per floor. This sounds helpful, but since all longer range twisted are rares, it will do nothing most floors. Also, goob and scraps are really not that bad if you keep an eye out, so wasting a trinket slot that mainly helps on black with a longer range twisted isn't very helpful. Besides, if you are careful, you will end up getting hurt still since it only protects once. I will say the tunes that have the most use are on lower soft ones like Tegan, Louis, or Yada. V and Brightney are a bit of an exception though due to their abilities allowing you to choose Twisteds, and even if Brightney is blackout exclusive, that is when they are the biggest problem. Popback is another trinket bought from Tandy's shop that is pretty bad, with it giving you a free pop every floor as long as you have an open inventory slot. You usually won't be using pops all that often as long as you know how to escape twisted, and even if you're using lots of items, they are a very common item to find on that floor, and in Tandy's shop, so there isn't much of a reason to use a trinket that gives you an only pops. Not even the bottles, just the cans. If you were to use this, I can see it working well on Tegan and Sprout for tapes, Bassy for tapes, and to give to the team, as well as teams like V that may have trouble with regaining stamina. Similarly, Megaphone also isn't great, which gives you an air horn every other floor, given you have this. Air horns are not as helpful as pops, unless you are a higher speed, and even with that, many high speed tunes have lower stealth, or a Pebble which uses ability. And if you are a tune like Cole or Flutter that is higher stealth, but is distracting, you either don't need that many air horns, or constantly getting twisted taken, where the air horns wouldn't pick them up. If you were to use this, the only tunes I can see it working on are, as I mentioned, with higher speed and normal or higher stealth. Flutter and Cole it works fine on, but isn't that great, and Pebble has his ability. However, I think it could be more useful on Sprout, Tisha, Flight, Coco, or Bassy. All seem to have good movement speed with a basic or higher stealth that play other roles, allowing them to use an air horn to just save a teammate. Moving off the trinkets bought from Dandy, let's discuss Feather Duster, a trinket that gives you 20 stamina whenever you pick up an item. This usually isn't all that helpful since item locations are random and usually isn't that helpful when you are being chased, which is where you actually need the stamina. Besides, with proper stamina conservation, you're gonna need it most of the time, so what's the point of really using it at all? It's only really helpful on a few tunes. Starting off, I don't think it's that great on Bassy, because she's already really fast with 5-star movement speed and 4-star stamina. I do see more use on Yada though due to pitiful 1-star stamina, and she can drop lots of items, you're more likely to end up getting use out of it. Sprout could also get some use out of it, since you tend to be running around a lot as him to pick up tapes and items, so Feather Duster helps him run around a little faster. Party Popper sounds decently good on paper, but when you use it, it's not going to be something great. It gives you an outline of all nearby twists for 5 seconds when you get onto a machine. However, when first getting onto a machine, you don't need it all that badly. Seeing where the twists are is helpful after being on a machine for a decent amount of time. Enough twists to start making their way over. However, even then, you usually don't need to trinket all that badly, and the bad machines might just require you to keep watch. I only see use with this on slower tunes who will struggle to get away from twisted, so you can prepare or create some distance first. Cardbox is a somewhat commonly used trinket, not to the level of fancy person fishing around, but it is used. It gives you a random common or uncommon item every floor as long as you have the space, so not that helpful since you can just grab those items on the floor pretty easily. The only use I see this trinket having is getting more tapes for healers and Bassy, but still not that great to use. Friendship Bracelet gives you 5 stamina for each a live Toon, giving you a total of 40 in a full lobby. If you're in a team that will stay alive a while, then it can be good, but that is not very likely, and usually it isn't all that necessary. I would say only use it on the 2 or 1 star stamina, especially the ones with 3 star movement speed instead of 4, that being Gigi, Finn, or Shelly. Since still isn't all that great, since it only feels all that needed on 1 star movement speed, where there you is just a better and more consistent option. Diary raises Toon stuff by 25%, and yes, it does have a bit of use, which is enough to put it here instead of the useless tier. It only helps you have the same stealth as a distractor because it doesn't raise stealth high enough to go up a star, and on Brightning and Trimpo it does literally nothing on them. Its use comes in being able to assist a distractor, so Tisha and Flight can use it to give a speed boost easily during panic on any 3-star stealth distractors. I could also see it being used on faster extractors like Shelly or maybe Yada if the distractor has 2 stars. So that machines near the distractor area can get done quick. Still isn't that great, but it has some small uses. Lucky Coin gives a 12% boost to a random stat at each floor. This being the highest any stat is raised by a trinket, but of course it isn't very consistent. It will help with extracting and escaping twists at times, although stealth is usually not all that useful. The problem with this trinket is its inconsistency, so it usually is just better to use a trinket that helps you more. Not much else to say since I can't recommend it for anyone due to its randomness. I guess on tunes that usually don't need one of their trinkets all that bad, but still, there is just better. Savory Charm saves you one time when you're attacked at 1 heart and then becomes completely useless after that. It does help with your survival technically, but if you really need the extra heart, then use Pink Bow or Clown plus Ribbons will to make you generally lose hearts less, instead of a single extra heart. However, I can see this being helpful on Cosmo and Ginger since you will want to be on 1 heart, and with their higher stuff, you can stay out of the way often, so it's nice if you do end up getting hurt on accident. Mains also have a bit of use from Savory Charm due to having 1 less heart, but it still isn't great on them. Bone gives you a 25% speed boost for 4 seconds whenever you pick up an item. A very situational trinket most of the time, but it can help if there is an item while you are in a bad situation. Still not really worth using over other trinkets. However, there is an exception being Bassie, who can drop items on the ground to constantly get the boost. While she may not need it all that badly with her stats, it can be fun, and is an alternative to distracting Bubbles there. Other than that, there isn't any particular use on it. Nightcap, soon to be replaced by Star Pillow, gives a boost to stamina regeneration while on a machine. Currently 40%, but it is getting buffed to a 100% boost. Usually you don't need the regeneration all that badly when you are on a machine, so it isn't all that great. But with its buff, there are definitely some niche situations it will be helpful in for lower stamina tunes, especially which is what I would suggest in this. I feel the same with this as I do Friendship Bracelet, an okay trinket out stamina, but there is an alternative. Now on to Toilet, which refreshes an active ability cooldown in the elevator, which most abilities will have already gone through cooldown with how long the elevator lasts. Then the higher tunes with higher cooldowns either don't need to use their ability at the start and or end of a floor. I could see Gigi doing well with this, so you can gamble a little more, and V if you don't have a distractor, so you can see Twisted during panic and the start of the floor. And there we go, finally done with trinkets that have barely any use, if any at all. Just the trinkets here I would actually suggest using. This section has trinkets that are either good, but for earlier on, or trinkets that have very good use on some tunes without being amazing overall. Wrench is a good trinket for early game, being a voice of V's remote with the partially filling 1 machine per floor instead of completing 1 machine per floor. Not something I am all that into using, but if you've the eager to get it, it definitely helps. I would say use this if you have no other trinkets to use. Don't make it a priority though, just a backup. Thinking Cap increases the size of your skill check, so it doesn't actually help, but if you struggle with 1 and 2 star skill check, it can be a good pick, especially if you plan to extract a lot of them too. However, I would recommend trying to just practice and learn to play without it if you can for a trinket that will be more helpful. Extraction manual is not all that helpful with it increasing extraction speed by 5%. Not awful, and it does help, and you can buy it pretty early on, but it gets outclassed pretty easily. You should use on tunes that will be extracting a lot as until you get the much better magnifying glass. Similarly, Blue Banana raises extraction speed by 7.5%, but decreases skill check chance by 5%. Not the best because skill checks help a lot, but it can help on lower skill check tunes instead of extraction manual, especially if you have trouble hitting it. It makes you still hit the skill check size without any changes, just less often. Again, it gets an outclass, but it helps in early stages of the game with being a common drink. That's all the early game trinkets. Let's move on to Water Cooler, which gives you 50 more stamina but lowers movement speed by 5%. I would stick to lower stamina tunes to use this on, but I would if you are going to use this on 3-star stick. Don't use it on a low speed tune. And Trimbo also falls under this with his 1-star stamina. The other 1 and 2-star stamina tunes are 3 or 4-star movement speed, so they won't struggle too much with the lower speed. And if you really need to, you can just pick Bow to get that speed back, plus a little more when running. Personally, I would consider this amazing for GG with either Pick Bow or Magnifying Glass. I don't feel like it's as needed on even 2 stamina tunes like Shelly or Finn. And then Yada, Tish, and Blight, they can use Dog Flesh to not need to use their stamina as often. Switch Charm and Ghost Takes go together with them both lowering cooldown time for active abilities. Switch Charm lowers the cooldown by 8% while Ghost Snakes lowers by 5 seconds, so it depends on the cooldown time which is better. Any cooldown at 63 seconds or above, then Sweet Charm is better, with the cooldown being lowered by over 5 seconds. However, at 60 seconds or lower, Sweet Charm is less effective than Ghost Snakes being under 5 seconds. These triggers are good for when you want to use your ability more often, although I would suggest only using one, even if for some tunes both are a viable option. Sweet Charm works well on Astro, Gigi, and Jelly. Ghost Snakes works well on Coco, Connie, Flay, Rudy, Scraps, Tisha, Toodles, V, and maybe Pebble. Peppermint Icing gives a Toon with 30 stamina whenever they use their active ability, being a good little boost for Toons with lower cooldown and pairing very well with Ghost Snakes. That pair works very well on Rudy, Scraps, and Toodles, with their lower cooldown allowing them to get stamina whenever they need it. I could also see it working well on Connie, but the pair isn't as great because of her 1-star movement speed. Pink Bow is the most optimal. Astro, Flight, and Tisha also get good use of Peppermint Icing in solo runs, where they won't need to time their abilities to help others at all, so it's a good boost when needed if they also get the speed boost alongside the stamina regen. Vassy also cannot use this trinket, it does not work on her, even if she has 0 cooldown. Blaze Fondant Bag gives a 4-second boost to all candy items when used. This can be very helpful now and then, since you can find candies on the ground pretty easily, but it isn't something that will be amazing on most tunes. A trinket with good use when you need it, but it's not going to be used all the time. However, both Coco and Yada get an extra use out of this trinket due to them providing candies. Yada drops them when completing Machine and getting hurt, while Coco's Bonbon count as candies. So you'll be able to use lots of candies, which will be even stronger with the added on 4-second trip Blaze Fondant Bag. I think it's some use the best with speed candies and Bonbon speed effect, since it turns a 5-second speed boost to 9 seconds, which can really help with getting from twisted, especially the more threatening ones like Pebble or V. Vanity Mirror gives a 30% running speed boosting Panic Mode, being a slightly larger boost than Panic Alarm, but it lasts the entire time so it gets more use. On any slow tune, it can help with getting to the elevator quicker if you're farther away, but I'm personally not a huge fan of it because it's possible to make it in time, and on a bigger map, you usually want to be staying near the elevator near the end of the floor, if possible. What I like it for is helping others get to the elevator easier, using it on lower stealth tunes and higher stamina, that being Bobette, Brittany, Goob, and Tegan. Blizzard and Louie also can work if you can manage the 3-star stamina well. Finally, the last trinket in this tier, Dandy Puff, which makes everything in Dandy Shop 50% off for this user, being a better version of Fancy Purse, which I think can be used on a tune that you have a free trinket slot on. But there are a couple tunes that use it very well. Vassy can buy items for cheap and then give it those items to other tunes who need them. She can get jumper cables and valves for cheaper to get more machines done, and healing items can be hoarded for when someone may need it. Cosmo and Ginger can work well with it to get more band-aids and medkits to give the team more healing, and they can survive well enough without other trinkets, so they can work well with it. Tegan similarly has good stats to not need particular trinkets, and since she heals herself with 100 tapes, it can be pretty helpful with getting good items, and still being able to heal plenty. Sprout can use it well since he heals teammates with 100 tapes, but I personally feel like you usually have to just sacrifice Bottom from Dandy in general to heal the team, unlike Tegan who is just healing herself. Now, the final 9 trinkets are trinkets that provide amazing help for a team, and although I decided to split it into 2 tiers, they're all the really good ones. I just find the use of the top tier more commonly helpful to teams. First trinket here is Speedy Shoes, which gives a 5% boost to walk and run speed. I'm putting this here because once you get the other movement speed trinkets, this just feels like kind of a backup to those. The walk speed boost isn't enough to outwalk Toon as a 4-star movement speed tune, and if you want to run speed, then Pink Bow gives more. And you can just use both for extra speed on either walking for distracting or running for slower. Very good for early game to get some extra speed and works very well, but is overshadowed by the others. On the topic of movement speed, we have Clownhorn and Ribbonspool, both giving a 10% walk and run speed boost, but Clownhorn only works on odd floors, while Ribbonspool works on even floors. These are good alternatives to Pink Bow and Speedy Shoes, with you getting slightly less run speed, but you get higher walk speed, which can be nice to have. But they only really work well together, outside of 2 exceptions, so they can't go any. Those exceptions being Razzle and Dazzle, who is slow on even floors, and this trinket was definitely designed for them. Technically it won't work on odd floors, but he has 5-star movement speed on odd floors, so the extra run speed and walk speed is generally better. The other exception is Duo Distracting. We have 2 distractors, both with Dog Flesh, and then one for Clownhorn while the other Ribbons. So you swap who distracts every floor, but have 20% more walk speed instead of 15%. Although you then end up with half the speed on half the floors if one of the distractors dies, so it is just a fun thing to do sometimes. Scrapbook feels like it shouldn't be this high, but it is actually amazing in use, with it lowering stealth by 5%. Now this is obviously not very good normally, because why would you want to lower your stealth? but it is amazing when distracting. It can help on 2-star stealth distractors, but they don't have to worry about the massive tunes that have 3-star stealth, although it can be nice if you. I find it amazing in Pebble though, because with 5-star movement speed, he's fast enough with just Dog Flesh. It also works well in Coal, Flutter, Flight, and Tisha, who also have 3-star stealth and can distract. Also no, it doesn't help on Bassie because she will still have higher stealth than 3 stars. Vizurmo is a very popular choice, and while it could be higher, I feel like there are times it doesn't need to be used, and it commonly does. Plus, it can be swapped between for faster general extraction or slower extraction, but completing one mission instantly can depend on the two. The twos that can get some help with it are Astro, Bassi, Cosmo, Ginger, Sprout, and Tegan. This can help with getting tapes for healers, completing machines for the slower creatures here, and getting risky machines done with higher stuff. I've also seen it be used on Pablo, where you run to use and go distract, although if you plan on extracting as him, I wouldn't recommend it. I also just don't think it is all that helpful on fast extractors like V or Shelly outside of mission pressure Discord runs. The trinket itself is pretty good, but it just is not necessary at times. Participation award raises the chance of getting a skill check by 25, and but lowers the size of it by 10%. I find this helpful on any 3-star skill check or higher where I don't plan on using any other trinkets. It only goes down in here because magnifying glass is ready to use alone, so it's only particularly good when put together. That doesn't mean it isn't great though, since tunes like Shelly, Finn, Tisha, Louie, Extractor, Goob, and Pebble, Boxed, and Exit, and Poppy get really good use out of it, and instead of the 4-star movement speed tunes here, don't really have much better alternatives to going full Extractor. Alright, on to the top 3 trinkets in this game, starting off with Pink Bow, which gives it 7.5% speed boost and running speed, so it is the optimal trinket on any slower movement speed to help them get away from Twisted easier, even if they can only do it for so long. I also see good use in it on some 3-star movement speed tunes, whether that is ones with lower stealth like Glisten, Brightney, and Tegan, or just general surviving, especially on tunes with 3-star movement speed, or just general survival. It isn't something that I personally prefer on most tunes, but I can see why others prefer it over going full on extraction. It is just the trinket for battle survival on tunes with 3-star movement speed or lower, and still allowing other trinkets to be used, or you can put it on speed issues for a full 12.5% run speed boost. Similarly, Dog Flesh is also cute, with it giving a 10% walk speed boost. First of all, it helps distracting so you can outwalk tunes, which can be a major part of getting past floor 20 and going into further floors, so it is really amazing. I also find it helpful on 4-star movement speed tunes when not distracting. 5-star movement speed is fast enough for not distracting, and you won't be walking when trying to get away from twisted as a 3-star movement speed or lower tune, so it isn't very good in them despite it being pretty commonly seen. However, with 4-star movement speed, Dog Flesh is enough to outwalk common twists, and slightly faster dudes can be dealt with easier with good stamina conservation. I find it really helpful on lower stamina tunes, that being Yada, Tisha, and Flight. However, I like it on all 4-star movement speed tunes because it makes this way easier to deal with. Now finally, what I personally think is the best trinket in the game, Magnifying Glass, which adds more accumulation in a skill check but makes it 33% smaller. If I'm planning to extract, then I use this trinket most of the time, with the exception of some slower tunes, mainly Cop. It really helps speed things up, and even if you hit the gray area, you get a decent boost, so I'm only against using a 1-star skill check. It isn't a complex trinket, and it works well on pretty much every tune as long as you can hit it if you're extracting a lot, so I can't even suggest for tunes. It's just that generally good. And that is the final list. These are lists, but if you're just skipping to this section, maybe you could look if you're considering a specific trinket so you know when to use it. Hopefully this can help some players understand when trinkets should be used and if they should be used at all really.